Welcome to session number 60 of New Testament Survey with Dr. John. I'm in the Revelation of John, different John, a long time ago. Uh, we will be starting today in chapter 1 of Revelation. Last time we went through some of the principles of interpretation. You should understand that the book of Revelation is a difficult book. It's not the place to start. If you're new to this series, this is not the video for you. I recommend spend some time in the Old Testament, spend a lot of time in the New Testament, especially the Gospels and in the letters of Paul. And then finally, when you've mastered all of that, head for the book of Revelation. Revelation is tough because of the imagery. Lots of figures of speech, symbolic language, language that has meaning for John's readers, but may be difficult for us. Because of that, some things that we're going to get into in this set of lectures will be controversial. I don't claim to have the final answers. When we get to heaven, we'll find out who was right and who was wrong, and we'll all sit around and drink coffee and talk about that. For now, our job is to do our best to understand the words on the page. That's the beginning point. What does it really say? Not what would we like it to say, but what does it actually say? We'll begin in chapter 1. See if I can make this work. Okay, John starts out with, not this one, but earlier on even. Where is my cursor? Here we go. We'll start out with the prologue and the blessing. This is a photograph of, this is actually a Greek Orthodox priest on the island of Patmos, but I can't help but thinking that a 90-year-old Apostle John must have looked a little like this old guy. I kind of liked him, so I shot him the time I was there many years ago. So we start off with a prologue, the revelation of Jesus Christ. That's the title of the book. Um, the first line on the scroll of papyrus is considered the title of ancient books. And notice this is not the revelation of black helicopters and giant beasts and uh, nuclear bombs falling out of the sky. This is the revelation of Jesus Christ. Revelation or apocalypse is an uncovering, an opening up, and explaining. And at the end of the day, we're not going to try to identify the tail numbers on the helicopters. We're going to try to understand something more about the character of Jesus Christ. The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him being Christ, to show to his servants the things that must soon take place. John believed that the end was near. Most everybody in the New Testament era believed that the end was near. The reason for that is two things. One, even Jesus didn't know the time of his return when he left. He probably believed that he was coming back soon to establish the kingdom, but he knew that he didn't know. And so he could not tell his disciples, or for that matter, us, when he's coming back. One of the key principles for understanding biblical prophecy is that often we're not supposed to know the when or the specific details. We spoke of the principle of deliberate obscurity, and this is one of those cases where that's true. For John, the end of things was obscure. And so he really didn't know, but he thought it would be soon. The second principle is the principle of imminency. That is, that we believers are to live our lives uh, in the light of the immediate possibility of the second coming of Christ. Jesus could arrive at any time. Uh, he could arrive very soon, and we need to live our lives in that light. We need to organize our affairs as though we were going to live out our whole lives and uh, leave a legacy to our grandchildren, but at the same time recognize that Jesus could come today. He made it known by sending his angel to his servant John, as the end of verse 1. It's interesting that this revelation comes through an angel. Sometimes Old Testament prophets had dreams. Sometimes they had uh, what we call immediate visions. They just were thrown into a trance and saw a vision. In this case, there was an angel involved. And we're not told very much about this angel. We're not given him a name or anything else. There's not some grand mystical event. An angel operating as a messenger for God came and spoke with the Apostle John. This last line, blessed is the one who reads aloud the words of this prophecy, and blessed are those who hear and who keep what is written in it, for the time is near. A reiteration of the time is near. Uh, these things could happen at any time. Now, if we read the book carefully, that is, and you'll recall that our approach to prophecy is going to be literal. The words on the page, and we're going to ask, well, what does this really mean? And if the literal implication of the figurative language on the page suggests something that hasn't happened yet, then the principle of futurity comes in. Events that are future and haven't happened yet are still future. If God has promised that something will happen, it's not our job to wonder about what it could possibly have meant in the past. It's still future. Um, let's see if I can get this clicker to work. Oh, yes, it does. I can show you some pictures of the island of Patmos. This is me many years ago when my beard was still black, and when my hat wasn't all crinkled up, and we were riding one of these things. It's called a flying dolphin, from the island of Samos out to the island of Patmos, and here is the long approach to Patmos. There's two very different parts of the island, or of the people who live on the island. Down at the base is the port, and it's relatively secular. There are restaurants, there are hotels, there are tourist infrastructure places. You can rent an umbrella if you want to go to what passes for a beach on this little island. And up at the top is called the Hora, or the high place, and that's where the monastery is located. A lot of Greek islands have a monastery on the top, at a town down around the base, and it's interesting how that's worked out. This is Patmos from a distance. Get a little closer. There's the harbor. This is where the ferry boats come in. Here's a path going up the side of the mountain. There's the port in the background, and this goat path is one of the oldest trails on the island. It's at least to the time of Christ. So it's very, very likely that John walked up and down this track. The track goes right past the place that is revered as the Cave of John, but we don't know where that might have been. Here's the Korah. This is the monastery on the top of the mountain. This lovely lady was waiting for us on the way back down, and she wanted to point out some of her flowers. You just wonder if maybe the Virgin Mary looked like this in her old age. What a pretty lady! I just like her. And then here's a view from the very top with all the ferry boats lined up like puppies with a mama dog, walking around the monastery. This monastery is famous for its collection of ancient New Testament manuscripts. These manuscripts go all the way back to the 3rd and 4th centuries. We have some very, very old manuscripts here. The collection is still being explored by Western scholars. The monks who live here no longer make copies of the manuscripts, but they do protect them very carefully. So the manuscripts are still there, and scholars go to Patmos and get permission to take photographs of the manuscripts. More paths around the island, and then back down to the port, and then we bid a fond adieu to the little island of Patmos. It's a place I enjoy visiting. Okay, let's go on to John's description. It says, John to the 7 churches that are in Asia. Okay, there we go. 7 churches in Asia. By Asia, John means Asia Minor. He would have been writing to the 7 churches on the western end of Turkey. Grace to you and peace. There's that same phrase. John and Paul were walking from the same playbook. From him who is, and who was, and who is to come. The past, the present, the future. Jesus is eternal. And from the 7 spirits before his throne. That's a problem. We don't know who those 7 spirits are. Some have suggested that 7 is the number of perfection, and that this is a reference to the Holy Spirit. I have never liked that. It's entirely possible this is a reference to 7 specific angels who operate before the throne of God. Whatever, the 7 spirits are mentioned fairly frequently in the book of Revelation. We keep coming back to them. They're obviously key operatives, assistants, workers before the throne of God. And he has made us a kingdom and priests to his God and Father. To him be glory and dominion forever and ever. Amen. The kingdom and priests business takes us all the way back to Exodus 19 and ties the church into the heritage of Israel. We also are a kind of kingdom and a kind of priesthood. Okay. In chapter 9, Jesus says to John, write what you see in a book and send it to the 7 churches. And then he lists them: Ephesus and Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis and Philadelphia, and Laodicea. These 7 churches are in 7 cities of Western Asia Minor, and we can still find all of them today. They are still there. The cities are, and in some places we can even find the remnants of the churches. So the idea that this is all allegorical and there's nothing here at all is destroyed. I mean, we can't argue that. These churches were real churches in real cities in Western Asia Minor. We can still find them on the circular Roman road. Well, it's not really circular. It's a road up the coast and then back down inland about 12 miles or so. And it's an oval-shaped postal road that the Romans used for delivering the mail in all of these places. And a man in a wagon would go from one city to the next, delivering mail, picking up mail, and sending it around. The Romans built their system on the older, literally the Persian pattern, and it worked just fine. But the point is that these are real letters set to real churches. The book of Revelation needs to be understood in the context of uh, a communication, a kind of an encyclical letter to 7 churches. Now, after it was published in that way, these churches kept copies, virtually certainly, and the copies of John's last literary effort were sent all over the empire. So this did spread. Uh, the 7 golden lampstands in verse 12. Let me read a little bit more of that. John, let's start at verse 9. I, John, your brother and partner in the tribulation, the kingdom, the patient endurance, was on the island of Patmos on account of the word and the testimony. I was in the Spirit, and I heard a voice saying, write what you see in a book. Then I turned to see the voice that was speaking to me, and on turning I saw 7 golden lampstands. The lampstands are going to be explained later on as the ministry of each of the individual churches. I think that's a fascinating note. The point of a lampstand is to hold an oil lamp, and a single oil lamp does not provide a whole lot of light. Olive oil is not it's not a great source of light. It does, in fact, burn, and it does produce a little flame, but it isn't much. But when you put one oil lamp in a small, dark room, it lights up the whole room. It doesn't. It's not a spotlight. It's not one of these modern LED 5 million megapixel thing. But it lights up the room. The point of the church is to bring light into a dark place. And a small church in a very large pagan population produces light in that place. And that light is attractive to the people who surround. So 7 golden lampstands, and those are the 7 lampstands of the 7 churches of Asia Minor. So what John is saying here is that there is standing before the throne of God. There is a symbolic representation of the ministry of each individual church. Your church and my church are doing their little bit to put light into a dark place, and like a lampstand. In the midst of the lampstands, one like a son of man, clothed with a long robe and a golden sash around his chest. This is Jesus. The Son of Man is always Jesus everywhere we find him in the New Testament. And the hairs of his head were white, like wool, like snow. His eyes were like a flame of fire, feet like burnished bronze. In his right hand, he held 7 stars. Interesting. And from his mouth came a sharp 2-edged sword, his face like the sun shining in full strength. And when I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead. And he laid his right hand on me and said, fear not, I am the first and the last, the living one. I died, and behold, I am alive forevermore. I have the keys of death and Hades. Write, therefore, the things that you have seen, those that are, and those that are to take place. This is verse 19. Many interpreters feel that this ought to be understood as an outline of the book. The things that are the things of the present day. That's the seven churches. So write these letters to the seven churches. The things that you have seen is a reference to the vision that John has just been given. The things that will be after these things come at the very end of time. Let me show you an outline that helps with that. This is an outline of the book of Revelation. We're going to run into this again, and we'll talk about it. The seven churches are that which is right now, the church age, if you will. At the end of the church age comes this 7-year tribulation period. The seven seals, seven trumpets, seven persons, seven bowls represent the judgments of God at the end of time, and just prior to the second coming. So we see the church age followed by a 7-year time of the wrath of God, followed by the second coming of Christ. That's the arrow coming down, followed by the last things. The things that must come after this include the kingdom age and the eternal state. And the book of Revelation divides up in this way very easily. The first 3 chapters are related to the 7 churches. The last 3 chapters relate to the things that must come after this. The rest of the book is about this terrible time of wrath that we call the tribulation period. And you'll notice in order here, I'm going to come back to the order of the seals and the trumpets and the personages and the bowls. You'll notice that these are not sequential. We don't get 7 seals followed by 7 trumpets, followed by 7 persons, followed by 7 bowls. All 4 of these countdown clocks are leading toward the second coming. I think the 7 bowls are much closer to the end than the 7 seals or the 7 trumpets. But what we see is 7 seals on a scroll that are opened, and with the 7th seal, we're introduced to 7 trumpets, which will take us back into the beginning part of the tribulation period. When the 7th trumpet is blown, just before the second coming, the 7 personages are introduced, and that takes us all the way back into history and leads us down toward the second coming. The 7 bowls are the final acts of judgment. So all of these have to do with the wrath of God, the times of the Gentiles, the end of Israel's existence, the outpouring of the wrath of God on earth. And that's followed by, at the very end of it all, the Battle of Armageddon, and then the second coming of Christ to set up the kingdom age, and then the new heaven and the new earth. And this pattern is repeated several times in the book, and we're going to see the 7s all the time. Okay, the things that are the letters to the 7 churches, and we're going to spend the rest of our little bit of time here looking at these 7 churches. John writes first to the church in Ephesus, and then on to Smyrna and the rest. Every one of them has a similar pattern. It starts out with a prologue to the angel of the church in Ephesus. Right now, the angels. I need to talk about the angels for a second. The 7 stars and 7 lampstands. So the lampstands are, well, like these lampstands that you see standing here. These are actually candlesticks, but lampstands. That's the ministry of the individual church, the ability to give light. The star is the for each church is called the angel of that church. It's traditional to understand this as a kind of a guardian or guiding angel who is assigned to every individual church. And that's a position that I've always liked. It doesn't have a lot of practical application, but I've always liked that. Some modern interpreters have looked at the meaning of the word angel. Angelos means a messenger, and who is the messenger to each church but the pastor? So the pastor of the church is the quote angel unquote. Yeah, that's true, and I can see some practical applications for that. Um, but I'm not sure we can decide that issue. It's just kind of a fun thing to think about. So let's go on to the Church of Ephesus. I've shown you some Ephesus pictures in the past. Let's see if this will work. I think it might. Oh, here's Ephesus. Okay, this is the great theater at Ephesus where Paul made his defense. And it would hold 20,000 people or so. This library was built after the time of Paul, right across the street from the Temple of Aphrodite. And this is a library that actually John might have been familiar with. It is probably the library much later on, 600 years later, that boasted of having a complete collection of the letters of Paul. And claimed that it was the original papyrus copies and available to the rest of the church. Uh, this is all Ephesus, lots of marble. It's a beautiful big ruin. Most of the ruins date to the 4th through the 7th century. We see a lot of stuff underneath that, archaeological stuff. The gray stuff on the right that's not marble is a part of the Temple of Aphrodite. The gladiator, and of course the dogs of war. There's the harbor of Ephesus, all silted up today. And there's that picture of the Cathedral of St. John. Looking around storehouses. Okay. Ephesus was a big city, and the church of Ephesus was probably fairly large. The ruins of Ephesus still attract crowds today. It's one of the premier tourist attractions in all of Turkey. The classic tradition of John's life here and his ministry in Ephesus, along with Mary, the mother of Jesus, the Virgin Mary, are very strong. It's a powerful tradition. This is the Cathedral of St. John. Not too far away is the Cathedral of Mary. And these churches go back to the 4th or 5th century. Obviously before the city of Ephesus finally died out. But these were big churches. During New Testament times, the church itself was not all that impressive. They didn't have big buildings. They met in houses. There were individual elders leading each house church. Paul planted this. Timothy was there for a bit. And then he was followed by the Apostle John. For heaven's sakes, what a heritage in a church like this. So John, exiled to Patmos, is writing to a church that is his home church, and he still has some good things to say. And he says, you are a solid, conservative, staunch old church, but they've gotten kind of boring. Look at this. I know your works, your toil, your patient endurance. You cannot bear with those who are evil. So they might be a little legalistic. You have tested those who call themselves apostles and are not, but have found them to be false. So there's a doctrinal soundness here that is very strong. I know that you endure patiently in bearing up for my name's sake and have not grown weary. But I have this against you, that you have abandoned the love that you had at first, the loss of first love. Uh, Donna and I can remember, like yesterday, when we were newlyweds. It's been 50 years now, but we remember being newlyweds and how much fun it was. With starting up housekeeping, getting our first apartment, uh, and making a way through life on our own. It was an adventure, and it was fun. And we didn't usually have any money. I remember when my only transportation, a bicycle, was stolen while we were in seminary. Life was hard. But we enjoyed one another and we enjoyed married life, and it was such fun. Uh, a young church often has that kind of um, excitement about this new relationship to Christ and the new ministry that they're embarking on. But with time, that gets institutionalized. It becomes tradition. It becomes a kind of a humdrum routine, and that's what we need to guard against. Uh, that's the only admonition. For every one of these letters, there's a greeting, there's a characterization of Christ. There is usually some line of praise, and there's usually some admonition, and this is followed by something like this. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. The one who conquers, I will grant to eat of the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God, which is a good thing. So we don't make this get down on all fours. We don't try to understand every detail. But in general, we look for the praises. These are things that the churches are doing right. And we look at the admonitions, the things that the churches are doing wrong. You can actually set this up in a kind of a grid, 7 churches by 7 sections, and set it up in a grid and look at what each of them has to offer. When we go to the church at Smyrna, we find something interesting. There is no admonition. John has nothing but good things to say about the church at Smyrna. This photograph is taken in the modern Turkish city of Izmir. Izmir is, of course, the modern Turkish way of saying Smyrna. The ruins that you see here in the foreground are the ruins of a cathedral in Smyrna that dates to the 4th century. So the church was here. It was a big church. It was an important church. At the time that John was writing, the church in Smyrna was persecuted. To the angel of the church in Smyrna, write the words of the first and last who died and came to life. I know your tribulation and poverty, but you are rich, and the slander of those who say that they are Jews, but are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. Do not fear what you are about to suffer. Behold, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison, and you may be tested. For 10 days you will have tribulation. Be faithful unto death. Okay? John is not pulling punches here. He says, you folks are in for a tough time. Some of you are going to die. Stand firm. Be faithful. I will give you the crown of life. That's what's waiting at the far end. The crown of honor, the Stephanos. the crown of the winner. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says. The one who conquers will not be hurt by the second death. Good news. Pergamum is a little farther up the coast. Here you can see the view out into the plain. It's built up on top of a hill, and Pergamum is the place where Satan's throne is located. It's a very tough place to work, tough neighborhood. Satan's throne is the temple of Zeus that existed at Pergamum. And here we see the reassembled ruins of the temple of Zeus. And you would think, oh, well, that must be in Turkey. Nope, it's actually in Berlin. It had quite an odyssey. The temple of Zeus from Pergamum was taken in the 19th century by German archaeologists back to Berlin, and it was reassembled into a museum. And before World War II got so bad that it couldn't be done, the museum officials disassembled this entire display, all of the stuff that you see here, all of these things, and put them in big boxes and stored them in the cellar in the museum basement. And when World War II came through Berlin, the museum at ground level was destroyed completely, but the ruins of the Pergamum temple were saved. These things, still in their boxes, were put on flat cars and carried off to Moscow in Russia. And there they were put in a big warehouse. And I believe the Russians intended to one day build a museum, but it never happened. And in 1989, when the communist experiment finally failed, all of this stuff was sent back to Berlin, where we find it today. All of these images. This is the throne of Satan. This is the temple of Zeus in Pergamum. And that's what John was talking about. This is what Satan's throne is. To the angel of the church in Pergamum, write the words of him who has a two-edged sword. I know where you dwell, where Satan's throne is, and you hold my name fast. Okay, that's a good thing. Verse 14, but I have a few things against you. You have some there who hold the teachings of Balaam. Balaam taught that anything that you do for enough money is a good thing to do. Balaam was a mercenary. He would do anything for money. Some people are still like that today. And there's some other stuff that has to do with sexual immorality that is part of the teaching of Balaam. That's the admonition here. You're tolerating some of these people. Thyatira is inland, and in Thyatira, we find a group of people who seem to be putting up with a lady who is called Jezebel. Now, the Old Testament Jezebel was a witch. She taught sexual immorality and Baal worship to the people of Israel. She was a really evil person. Now, she's not reincarnated here, but whoever this woman is, she's teaching gross immorality in Thyatira, and the church there is apparently putting up with this. She's a real person. There's a faction of the church that is off into sin, and we don't really know what to do with that, but it's not good. The church in Sardis is in chapter 3. It's a church that has a big reputation, but has dropped into irrelevance. It's a name that is alive, but the church itself is dead. This facade is the library at Sardis and dates to about the 5th century. We know that in the first century, Sardis was a place where there were some very important uh, uh, Greek philosophical schools. There was an academy in Sardis, and there was probably a library in Sardis at the time of Christ, but the building wasn't built until later. The uh, the society of Sardis would have been very much given to academic thinking and philosophic uh, speculations of all time. The church would have had a big reputation because it could easily have attracted great teachers in the first century, but it's now dead because it's wandered off into the philosophy. Let me read a little bit of this. I know your works. This is 3 and verse 1. I know your works. You have a reputation for being alive, but you are dead. Wake up, strengthen what remains and is about to die. For I have not found your works complete in the sight of my God. Remember then what you received and heard. Keep it and repent. If you will not wake up, I will come like a thief, and you will not know what hour I come against you. This is quite a threat. Yet you still have a few names in Sardis, people who have not soiled their garments. There's the commendation, and it's not much of a commendation. Uh, the one who conquers, verse 5, will be clothed thus in white garments, and I will never blot his name from the book of life. I will confess his name before my Father. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. So Sardis doesn't get much of a commendation, but they've got a lot to live up to. Watch out that your lampstand doesn't get pulled out of its place. The threat to remove a lampstand is a fairly important one. The removal of the lampstand is the removal of the possibility for further ministry. A church may continue to exist as an organization, but its impact for Christ will disappear. I have known lots of churches like that. The church in Philadelphia is the church that we all wish we were part of. This is the good church. To the angel of the church in Philadelphia, write the words of the Holy One, the true One who has the key of David, who opens and no one will shut, who shuts and no one opens. I know your works. Behold, I have set before you an open door which no one is able to shut. I know that you have but little power, and yet you have kept my word and have not denied my name. Behold, I will make those of the synagogue of Satan, who say they are Jews, but are not, but lie. Behold, I will make them come and bow down before you. They will learn that I have loved you. Because you have kept my word about patient endurance, I will keep you from the hour of trial that is coming on the whole world, to try those who dwell on the earth. I am coming soon. Hold fast to what you have, so that no one may seize your crown. The one who conquers I will make like a pillar in the temple of God. Never shall he go out of it. I will write on him the name of my God, the name of the city of God, the new Jerusalem, which comes down from my God out of heaven, and my own new name. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. That's a great message from Christ to the church. That would be a great thing to get. The last church on the list is Laodicea. Laodicea is the lukewarm church. Lukewarm is halfway between hot and cold. Verse 15. I know your works, that you are neither cold nor hot. I wish you were either cold or hot. So because you're lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth. This image in the background is a place I haven't been. It's called Pamukkale, and I'd like to go there. It's in between Laodicea and Colossae. Hot springs come up out of the ground, and they mix with colder water. So there's real hot on one side, and that feels kind of good. You get hot water, and it's good for whatever aches and pains. People go to this place for all kinds of, they take the waters, is what they. Some people drink it, and it's sulfur water. So I don't think I would like to drink it, but some people do, and they say that's really good for you. The cold water is from springs on the other side of the valley, and it mixes. And farther down the valley, what you get is a kind of a lukewarm water. At, uh, the uh, uh, the image John is giving here is of the lukewarm. The cold water is good to drink. The hot water is good for bathing, but the lukewarm is good for nothing. And if you try to drink the lukewarm sulfur water, it'll make you vomit. So Jesus says to the church, because you got nothing going for you. I'm just gonna spew you out. You say I'm rich, you've prospered, but you're not. You've got nothing. You're wretched, pitiable, poor, blind, naked. I counsel you to buy gold refined by fire, so that you may be rich, and white garments that you may clothe yourselves. Those whom I love, I reprove and discipline. So be zealous and repent. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. Verse 20 is a verse often taken out of context. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and eat with him and he with me. Okay, the one who conquers, I will grant to sit on my throne, as also I conquered and sat down with my Father on his throne. So the message here is a message to an unrepentant and lukewarm church. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. Jesus is not saying, I'm standing at the door of a bunch of unsaved people, and if you open the door, you'll get saved. He's saying to a group of Christians who are wishy-washy, uh, let's have a conversation here. Can we sit down and talk about this? I'm ready when you are to renew the church and turn it into what it's designed to be. But you have to open the door. You have to let me in. Uh, this is a great set of letters. It's possible to do a sermon series through uh, all seven, and just look at the practical applications to the life of the church today. Uh, I think it's possible to look at a historical sequence in the seven churches, although that's harder to do. Some people like that. Uh, I think the primary emphasis is on the need for individual churches to pay attention to their ministry, to spend time loving Christ and loving the world around them, and not getting caught up in the things that so easily distract us. Anyway, that's the first three chapters of this book of Revelation. I hope this has been helpful. And in our next section, we're going to go on to chapter 4, and we will enter into the visions of Patmos um, directly. There's a lot of fairly heavy stuff there, and I think we're going to enjoy it. Let's see if I can find my cursor. I'm going to try to shut this off. Okay, bye bye.